So every Saturday at 5, we read together the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So we'll share today some of the thoughts and events. Just let them inspire us. I know Swami Prabhupada, who was one of my teachers, used to say that the way to read scripture, the way to read mythology, is to read it and let it flow through you, not really analyze so much the words or the meaning of the words themselves, but afterwards to reflect on the residual. What did it leave behind after it washed through you? What does it leave within you? And very much the story of Sri Ramakrishna's lives, or any of the saints or avatars, very much the same way. It's not so much the period of time that they were running around doing and being amazing people, but it's the residue of what they left behind, the legacy of peace and unity for those who see and understand and want to understand. He starts by saying, one man may read the Bhagavata by the light of a lamp, and another may commit a forgery by that very same lamp, but the lamp is unaffected. The sun sheds its light on the wicked as well as the virtuous. You may ask, how then can one explain misery and sin and unhappiness? The answer is that these apply only to the jiva. Brahman is unaffected by them. There is poison in a snake, but though others may die if bitten by it, the snake itself is not affected by the poison. This is a really beautiful ideal, really beautiful truth that's necessary for us to find that inner peace. It brings that focus on that unchanging part of you that's always been you, that part of you that has answered any time you thought I am throughout your life, that unchanging self which has watched a mind grow in its education and its wisdom, that I that has watched a body grow older, and change in a multiplicity of ways, and yet has held the whole sense of being together as a unity, as a oneness. But it's the part of us we very rarely pay any attention to. It's the part of us that watches the pain of mind, watches the pain of depressions, watches the joys of excitations, watches the pleasures of the body. But it itself has just been the observer, unchanging, unaffected. And part of the desperation that we live out in life in trying to touch and grab and hold on to things that delight the mind and body somehow are never quite enough. And we always assume maybe because it's the proportions are too little, or the flavor was off, or it was the wrong person, or maybe the wrong marriage, or God forbid the wrong children, that something was just missing in the whole experience. And the fact is, what was missing is the fact that they were not real. They couldn't touch you. That unnamed self within that has always been steady, peaceful, content, the same through your life, mostly unnoticed and certainly not lived in, has gone on just being, needing nothing. And the mind, thinking that it's that self, thinking it's the real thing, continues its quest to try and give something to itself, which cannot be done. You are already full. What Brahman is cannot be described. All things in the world, the Vedas, the Puranas, the Tantras, the 6 systems of philosophy, so all these things, these systems of thought, these scriptures, these religions, these wisdom literatures, they have been defiled like food that has been touched by the tongue, for they have been read or uttered by the tongue. Only one thing has not been defiled in this way, and that is Brahman. No one has ever been able to say what Brahman is. That one thing that cannot be caught or trapped in a word. That infinity of experience, that infinity of love, that infinity of wisdom and inspiration. That one thing that cannot be encapsulated, cannot be boundaried, cannot be limited, Ourselves, our very notion of self, Swami Vivekananda says, is nothing but a collection of restrictions and limitations. I'm a man, I'm not a woman. I'm 35, or I'm 55, or I'm 65. But all of these specifics, they're actually just limitations, things that are only you for a short while. We describe ourselves by things that change and have no substance to them. We take on attributes and think that that is what we are, and that is what we pretend to be as we play our game. And Ramakrishna here is reminding us, know what you are. What you are will leave you breathless. What you are will leave you without a word, that you won't be able to express it. It's that looking, interestingly enough, I found someone online on YouTube that filmed the same thing that I had seen when I was about 8 years old, walking in the hills of Germany, actually. And this giant alfalfa field that covered several hills, and this strong wind that was blowing with this beautiful storm behind it was doing that wave movement across the grass, and that sun that was coming under the side of the clouds was catching it and glinting it. And I remember that feeling of almost a frustrated sadness. Even at 8 years old, I looked at that and understood that I could never really appreciate how beautiful that was. That I could sit there and stare at it for days and still not be able to comprehend how lovely, how inspiring and beautiful that was. And the same one was some nights when I come out of the temple and see the sunset over the water here. Just that moment of stillness, that's really how you describe beauty in its highest form. Just stillness. You at that point realize that you as an entity are just the observer, and that's all that's necessary. That's all that's required to identify and see the divine, that which is beautiful, that which is inspiring, that which is wise, that which is dharmic. To just in silence see it, know it, and let it pass, as it does across the senses. No one has ever been able to say what Brahman is. Vidyasagar to his friends, "Oh, that is a remarkable statement. I've learned something new today." The master, "A man had 2 sons. The father sent them to a preceptor to learn the knowledge of Brahman. After a few years, they returned from their preceptor's house and bowed low before their father. Wanting to measure the depth of their knowledge of Brahman, he first questioned the older of the 2 boys. 'My child,' he said, 'you have studied all the scriptures. Now tell me, what is the nature of Brahman?' The boy began to explain Brahman by reciting these various texts from the Vedas and scriptures. The father did not say anything. Then he asked the younger son the same question, but the boy remained silent. He stood with his eyes cast down. No word escaped his lips. The father was pleased and said to him, 'My child, you have understood a little of Brahman. What it is cannot be expressed in words.'" And this is that wonder of the endeavor of spiritual life. You'll never reach a goal. It's not designed that way. You'll never reach the mountaintop, as it were. Swami Brahmananda, and I say this all the time because it's such a fascinating thought to me, he said that Nirvikalpa Samadhi is really the highest state of realization that we can imagine as people, as bodies. It's that union with God, that loss of ego. And he said, all of us see that as being the pinnacle because we have this linear idea that we're going to achieve something or arrive somewhere or get something, having no understanding that we're sitting in the middle of it, just unaware of it, not knowing it, because we don't know our own nature. We don't know who we are. And if you don't know who you are, how do you know what you like? That's why our likes and dislikes are always changing, why our inspirations are always changing, because we don't have any idea. But he says that at this highest pinnacle that you can imagine, he said that's the beginning of spiritual life. And I thought about that, and there was a side of me that thinks I struggle, that side of me that thinks I'm going to have a perfect moment someday in the future where I go, aha, and realize oneness, not knowing that I won't be there when that happens. because that's exactly the nature of it. That self that has been looking falls away. It realizes the absurdity of looking for what it is, of trying to figure out what it is. And that side of me, which is the side with a name, the side with attributes and a body, that side bemoans a statement. It's like that, oh my God, I'm going to be working forever. What do you mean that's just the beginning? After all this work, it's going to be the beginning. And that side of me which knows, that intuitive side, which is constantly trying to poke or say something that can't be said, gets super excited because it knows that the real meaning of that statement is that you will fall in love with divinity forever. That feeling of love will forever increase. You will never finish falling in love. You will never understand the greatness of the nature of your own self, that nature of that divine spark, that image of God that is us. And even knowing enough just to be quiet, just like the man tells his son, you've understood a little of Brahman. You've got an idea. Men often think that they have understood Brahman fully. Once an ant went to a hill of sugar. One grain of that sugar filled its stomach. Taking another grain in its mouth, it started homeward. And on the way, it thought to itself, the next time I'm going to carry the whole hill home. That is the way shallow minds think. They don't know that Brahman is beyond one's word, beyond one's thought. However great a man may be, how much can he know of Brahman? Sukadeva and sages like him may have been big ants, but even they could carry but at most 8 or 10 grains of sugar. That notion, that idea of the sage, the reason the sage will never say that I know or that I'm enlightened is because that sense of I is so small compared to his sense of the I am, that sense of being, that there's no importance to hanging that label or label of any description, any attribute on him, because the sense of self has gotten so small, there's nowhere to hang such an attribute, such an idea. So the more that we go around thinking about our accomplishments, the more that we go around announcing or wanting respect or wanting recognition for what we've accomplished and what we've done, well, the farther we're getting from that goal, because that self has to get smaller. Those concerns about all of those things need to grow less important, so unimportant to us that they don't even occur to us to mention, don't even occur as a thought within us, mostly because our eyes are just gazing at the beauty of the wind on the grass, or the sun on the beach, or simply breathing and trying to understand what it means to be aware, trying to understand for a moment what this simple experience of just ising is. As for what has been said in the Vedas and the Puranas, do you know what it's like? Well, suppose a man has seen the ocean, and somebody asks him, well, what is the ocean like? The first man opens his mouth as wide as he can and says, what a sight! What tremendous waves and sounds! The description of Brahman in the sacred books is like that. It is said in the Vedas that Brahman is of the nature of bliss. It is Satchid Ananda. Sukha and other sages, they stood on the shore of this ocean of Brahman and saw and touched the water. According to one school of thought, they never plunged into it. Those who do cannot come back to the world again. So this notion, that inspiration, that beauty when you go out and look at the ocean, it's overwhelming, and yet what are you seeing? How much of an ocean are you actually perceiving? A few square miles at best, right? Before it curves around the edge of the world and you can't see the rest of it. How deep can you see? You see nothing but the surface of it. Even in the experience and the power of the waves, wow, amazing, gorgeous, beautiful. That little trickle of the ocean has already given you more than you can say. has already shown you more beauty than you can enunciate and explain or describe. And so that is what he's saying here, through this body, through this mind, through this experience of life, that beautiful height of spirituality that you may attain, that touch of the divine that you may indeed have, is like looking here at this small patch of ocean and being overwhelmed, not knowing or understanding that you have barely even begun to see the impressive, to see the overwhelming, to know the depth, the infinity of this undertaking, as it seems. Shruka and other sages, they stood on the shore of this ocean of Brahman. In samadhi, one attains the knowledge of Brahman. One realizes Brahman. In that state, reasoning stops altogether, and man becomes mute. He has no power to describe the nature of Brahman. It's a very important clue there, that the experience of God has nothing to do with philosophy. It has nothing to do with words and thoughts. It's not an arrangement of ideas in a mind. That now when we sit in our meditation and we say the word, we hear the word and we see the buildings in the mind of what that word means to us. And yet there's something that involves both aspects of that. There's a unity in it which the mind cannot give to you. You know, the mind always needs those three components, right? It needs a subject, and we are always that subject. It needs an object, something separate, and then it needs to build the relationship between that subject and object. So all worldly knowledge, all attempts at knowing God, will have to contain those three separate pieces. And so when the mind is trying to conjure up the idea of a unity, it keeps breaking it into at least three pieces. Of course, it's assembling it from 5 pieces, right? The 5 different senses coming in. So it's a hopeless thing to go to the mind and ask about God, to go to the mind and ask about yourself, which is the oddest thing, you know. You don't have to ask. You don't have to go. You don't have to build. You have to sit there, mute, silent, without a thought, and see for the first time, without assumption. Once a salt doll went to measure the depth of the ocean. Everybody laughs. It wanted to tell the others how deep the water was. But this it could never do, for no sooner did it get into the water than it dissolved. Now, who was there to report the ocean's depth? A devotee. Well, suppose a man has obtained the knowledge of Brahman in samadhi. Doesn't he speak anymore? Master. Shankaracharya retained the ego of knowledge in order to teach others. After the vision of Brahman, a man becomes silent. He reasons about it as long as he has not realized it. If you heat butter in a pan on a stove, it makes a sizzling sound as long as the water it contains has not dried up. But when no trace of water is left, the clarified butter makes no sound. If you put an uncooked cake of flour in the butter, it sizzles again. But after the cake is cooked, all sound stops. Just so, a man established in samadhi comes down to the relative plane of consciousness in order to teach others, and then he talks about God. It's that sense of separateness. That's that impurity, that me and mine. That's the element of mind that keeps it sizzling, that keeps it talking, keeps it noisy. You know, the mind in its natural state, we think that it's a thinking machine. That's what it's for. But actually the thinking is an impurity. It's meant to be still. It's meant to reflect the beauty of the self. It's meant to reflect love without any sense of self, any sense of limitation. It's meant to reflect wisdom and intelligence without a limit of an ego, without the badge of accomplishment. It's meant to be, just simply to be, without a past and without a future, knowing that all that is real is now, the present, and what can be said in the moment that doesn't require the past and the future? What word can be formed without time? So Shankaracharya, seeing this, knowing this, retained a bit of this impurity, just a bit of it, by will. That impurity of knowledge. I know something, I've seen something, I've understood something. Others may want it, may benefit from it. So he holds on to that. Ramakrishna said that he himself brought himself down from samadhi by his love for the devotees, that desire to be with devotees. And he says, many sages will go all the way to the edge of the ocean and not jump in. Why? Because they enjoy sugar. They don't want to be sugar. They want to enjoy sugar. And that's a perfectly beautiful attitude to have. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Enjoy the divine. Have no thought of being the divine, because it's the thought that blocks the knowledge. The bee buzzes as long as it's not sitting on a flower. Indeed. It becomes silent when it begins to sip the honey. But sometimes, intoxicated with the honey, it buzzes again. An empty pitcher makes a gurgling sound when it's dipped in water. When it fills up, it becomes silent. Everyone chuckles. But if the water is poured from it into another pitcher, then you will hear the sound again. The rishis of old attained this knowledge of Brahman. One cannot have this so long as there is the slightest trace of worldliness. How hard the rishis labored. Early in the morning they would go away from the hermitage and would spend the whole day in solitude, meditating on Brahman. At night they would return to the hermitage, eat a little fruit or roots. They kept their minds aloof from the objects of sight, from the objects of hearing and touch, and other things of a worldly nature. Only thus did they realize Brahman as their own inner consciousness. It's that struggle of not going out through the senses, not being intoxicated or enamored of the things of the senses. That really the things of the senses are just arrangements of thought, arrangements of mind. There's no reality there. Something is, and a moment later it's not. Everything of the senses in one way becomes potting soil, as we've mentioned in the past. That if you love things of the senses, all you're going to get is a tablespoon of potting soil eventually. Let that Mercedes sit there long enough, let that beautiful person hang there long enough, let that gorgeous house be there long enough. Eventually, potting soil is all that you will have earned. And so know that, and stop the insanity of collecting more, thinking that somehow you're going to feed yourself with it. It's like going to the beach and eating a tablespoon of sand and saying, oh, that wasn't very satisfying, I better try some more. Maybe I had the wrong spoonful. Maybe if I get some from over there instead. Or maybe I need more of it. Maybe it's the quantity that will make it better. So we run around, all of us in a world of infinite sand, creating our little piles, making sure nobody's going to get my sand, making sure we get the biggest one. All the while knowing that as much as we might put it in our mouth, it's not going to feed us. We're not going to get there that way. But in the Kali Yuga, man, being totally dependent on food for life, cannot altogether shake off the idea that he is a body. So the Kali Yuga, he's talking about, in one sense, talking about this day and age, where we don't have the time of the rishis. We can't go off into the mountains, and spend our day meditating on God and expect someone to pay those bills and to keep the house clean and to make things carry on. Then more than ever, we're tied into that curse of, the Garden of Eden. More than ever, we're out tilling the soil for 10, 12, 15 hours a day to pay for desires, to pay for the cars and the houses and the vacations and the friends and the parties and the foods. All these things that, how many have we paid for? How many have we enjoyed already? And yet there we are, 8, 10 hours a day, working our lives away, literally, for desire, for things that don't fulfill, needing none of it, but really afraid to face that truth sometimes. That's the Kali Yuga. That's the situation of the world these days, that we're totally dependent on food for life, and we can't shake off altogether this idea that we are a body, regardless of the evidence available to us. In this state of mind, it is not proper for him to say, I am he, meaning God, I am that. When a man does all sorts of worldly things, he should not say, I am Brahman, even if that's the truth. Because if you identify yourself with a body and mind, if you identify yourself with an ego, and then you attach that ego to the idea of being God, good Lord, what have you done? What have you done? You know, what have you done? And how full of self will you become? Full of ego. You know, oh, I can't do anything wrong. I'm God. I'm that. What need to worry? You know. But if at all you have a knowledge, a sense of a body or a particular, when you say the word I, if you're getting up and showering in the morning out of concern for the body, it's not time yet to say, I am that, I am God. Better to say that I'm not a body. Better to say that I'm not a gender. I'm not a particular class of society. I'm not American. I'm not male. I'm not straight. I'm not gay. I'm not anything that can be described. There's no word for me. My me is the same as your you, and it's infinitely beautiful, infinitely expressed through these infinite numbers of expression coming through our senses. The Jnani gives up his identification with worldly things, discriminating, not this, not this. Only then can he realize Brahman. It is like reaching the roof of the house by leaving the steps behind, one at a time. But the Vijnani, he is one who is intimately acquainted with Brahman, realizes something more. He realizes that the steps are made of the same material as the roof, bricks, lime, and brick dust. That which is realized intuitively as Brahman, through the eliminating process of not this, is then found to have become the universe and all of its living beings. The Vijnani sees that the reality which is nirguna, without attributes, is also saguna, with attributes. Yes, so that not I, that dismantling of the self, that sense of self, that small self, the egoistic I, the I that's a product of time and experience, to dismantle that by recognizing that it has never been the case. You know, that it has never been the case. I remember, for some reason, it's an odd memory actually, I think I was like 7 years old, sitting in the back of a car, driving through the country, and watching the cornfields, and just suddenly having this weird thought that one day I would be a man. And sitting there and thinking, gosh, I can't wait. How cool that will be. I'll be strong and I'll be tall, you know. I'll have a beard and a mustache. That's going to be so cool. Thinking about that, in hindsight, thinking about that is very interesting to me, because I identified myself as male and thought one day I'll be a man. And yet what was it in me that was a boy and then was a man and now is an older man? You know, what is that I that was going to experience being a man? What was that I that thought he lacked being a man? What an interesting, and that's why Sri Ramakrishna, just in that previous paragraph, he says, through discernment, through discrimination, don't let thoughts come and go and accept them. Stop them and think about them. You know, Ramakrishna said, when you find something beautiful, don't just let it go and think that you wished you had it because it was beautiful. He says, freeze frame that for a moment. Stop, walk around it, full 360 degrees. Ask questions about it. What is its nature? How long will it be there? What is the beauty that I see in it? What is it in me that recognizes beauty? How do I know what that beauty is? And if it is me that's declaring the beauty, what is it in the thing that is declaring beauty? Is there a thing there declaring anything? Where is this coming from? What is the nature of it? The scriptures in their maturity tell us that ultimately, when you answer that question, it's a name of God. Everything that you find attractive in this world for any particular reason has within it trapped, as it were, hidden, as it were, as a game of hide and seek, perhaps. A name of the beloved is caught in that object. You know it, you see it, you understand beauty intuitively because of that. But Ramakrishna says, no, stand there and look at it longer until the object falls away and just the beauty remains. And no, that's the thing. When you're able to do that, you can look at anything, a tin can in the gutter, and find the same beauty. You can look at this person who's utterly unattractive and this person who's utterly attractive, and you can love them both equally. Because that ego in you, that preference, that I want this, I don't want that, drops away. And by that dropping away, that neti, not this, you become free to love. That's the height, that's the freedom that the scriptures talk about. It's the freedom to love. The freedom to love without that fear getting in the way. The fear of being taken advantage of. The fear of loving more than you're getting. That the balances get out of scale. These fears you can leave behind by knowing the nature of yourself. These shortcomings of the world around you can go away when you stop with the sense of ego that's measuring them all the time. When you come to know that you are a light, that's love, and that you have an infinite amount of it, and there's no reason to meter it out in small pieces. The man cannot live on the roof a long time. He comes down again. Those who realize Brahman in Samadhi come down also and find that it is Brahman that has become the universe and its living beings. In the musical scale, there are notes sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, and ni. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do for us Westerners. That highest note, he says here. But one cannot keep one's voice on the highest note a long time. The ego does not vanish altogether. The man coming down from Samadhi perceives that it is Brahman that has become the ego, the universe, the living beings. This is known as Vijnana, or the great knowledge, big mind. The path of knowledge leads to truth, as does the path that combines knowledge and love. The path of love, too, leads to this goal. The way of love is as true as the way of knowledge. So the way to this understanding of unity, this oneness, it has multiple paths. There is no path of Advaita. That's the interesting thing. Advaita is not a path. It's a realization. And it's the union point of all the paths. The Christians will find it, the Muslims will find it, the Buddhists will find it, the Baha'is will find it. Everyone will find it because it's within them. It's not the property of a thing, a place, or an institution. It's your own, and it has always been your own. And your highest realization will be knowing that. Your greatest freedom will be expressing that and seeing that. The fearlessness that you'll one day experience will be because of that. As the all-pervading spirit, he exists in all beings, even in the ant. But the manifestations of his power are different in different beings. Otherwise, how can one person put to flight 10 while another can't even face one? And why do all people respect you? Have you grown a pair of horns? You have more compassion and learning. Therefore people honor you and come to pay you their respects. Don't you agree with me?" Vidyasagar smiled, and the master continues, "There is nothing in mere scholarship. Nothing. There's nothing in mere scholarship. Just knowing something is utterly meaningless," he's saying. "The object of study is to find the means of knowing God and realizing Him, knowing the reality, knowing the nature of the world that you're living in, knowing the nature of you, you for which the whole world has appeared, you for which all of your experience dances. A holy man had a book, and when asked what it contained, he opened it and showed that on all the pages were written the words Om Rama and nothing else. What is the significance of the Gita? It is what you find by repeating the word 10 times. It is then reversed into Tagi, which means a person who has renounced everything for God. And the lesson of the Gita is, O man, renounce everything and seek God alone. Whether a man is a monk or a householder, he has to shake off all attachment from his mind." Yes, so we'll close with that. This idea of shaking off everything but God. And see, sometimes that seems offensive. It seems odd to us because at different points in our life we think different things about what God is. And if God is this mean ogre up there poking you with a red-hot poker as you approach your destined hell, saying, you gotta change, it ain't working this way, do it. Then this idea of giving up everything and chasing God or going after the beloved is, uncomforting at best and certainly inflaming at worst. But when you know the nature of God is love, and what he's saying here is give up everything for love. Give up everything for pure intelligence. Give up everything to know what it is to be, purely to be, without attribute, without necessity of particular, without boundaries. Throw everything you have that limits you away. That's what he's saying. Throw everything that is a restriction to you away. Your desires, your aversions, your longings, your dreams, your identities, your friends and families. Throw them all away and take that which makes them all what they are, the pure love that they reflect to you, the idea of wisdom that they've taught you. Throw the paper away, forget the words, and be the lesson. That's what Thakur is telling us today. Are there any questions or ideas, curiosities, corrections? All right. Very good. Let's just take a few moments. I'll read this prayer that's always tucked in this book, and then I'll come and sit there and we can take as long as we like to think about these things. O Mother, I throw myself on your mercy. I take shelter at your holy feet. Be gracious and grant that I may have pure love for you. A love unsmitten by cravings for earthly things, untainted by any selfish end. A love desired by the devotee for the sake of love alone. And grant me the favor, O Mother, that I may not be deluded by your world-bewitching Maya. There is no one but you whom I will call my own. Mother, I do not know how to worship. I'm without austerity. I have neither devotion nor knowledge. Be gracious, Mother, and out of your infinite mercy, grant me love for your lotus feet.